Over the course of this presentation, we're going to cover the 3 tips that small businesses should remember when online marketing. Just to start, we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit. I am David, and I am on the business services marketing team. Before that, I spent a year with Care.com talking with small businesses, helping them hire caregivers as well as market their business. So I've listened and gone back and forth on the pain points, and I've seen some areas that small businesses can improve, and that the goal of this will be to kind of share those experiences with you. And we also have Mike. Mike's going to talk about himself because he knows more about himself than I do.
Hey everyone, this is Mike. I'm a team leader on the business services inside sales team. Been a team leader for about a little over a year now. I spent the 2 years prior working with small businesses, helping them build up their online presence and attract more customers. So I got to see what works and, more importantly, what does not work.
So here's some things we're going to cover over the course of this presentation. We're going to go over the marketing basics, and then we're going to dive more deeply into 3 tips that we can consider. So the 3 tips will be knowing your target market, creating a professional image, communicating your value, and then we'll recap everything we talked about over the course of the presentation and leave some time for questions and answers. Some housekeeping before we begin. Feel free to ask some questions in the chat feature as we go. If we cannot get to your question, we'll certainly reach out to you afterwards and make sure that your question is answered. This webinar, technology permitting, will be recorded and sent out to you afterwards. After this webinar, you'll also receive a survey in your screen as well as emailed to you. If you could take the 1 minute it takes to fill those 4 questions out and give us some feedback, that would really be useful for future webinars. And this webinar we hope is very helpful for you. We recognize it's not going to cover everything you need to know about marketing, so something I want to stress is it's very necessary to continue learning after this and beyond. I know for myself, I subscribe to all of these sorts of blogs and read articles because I want to learn something new every day because the business is always changing. So you guys are already on the right step by subscribing to learning experiences such as this. I just urge you to do that every day and continue to keep building. So to start, we'll just cover some basics of marketing. This is the purchase funnel that families typically go through. This isn't all-inclusive, but this is the 3 major areas that we're going to focus on today, specifically awareness and consideration. In awareness, this is when the family starts looking, they might not know what is out there or what exactly they need. So this is when they take to asking a friend if they've had any experiences or doing a Google search or anything along those lines to find out more information. This is, as a business, when you have the opportunity to catch their attention and letting them know about your business and what you have to offer. And then consideration, this is when they start considering what type of care options are best for their family. To take an example of senior care, they might be looking at whether they want to put their elderly loved one into an assisted living home or have a companion caregiver come into their house. The majority of this presentation is going to focus on the awareness and the consideration phase, because this is when you can really stay top of mind for the family. So when it comes to decision time, they know you exist, they know what you have to offer, and they can make the best decision. So remember that the best time to influence a family is during the awareness and the consideration phase. So, as I mentioned, if you could walk away with one thing today, I want you to remember these 3 tips. It's very important to know your target market. It's very important to maintain a professional image, and it's very important to communicate your value. As we'll dive deeper into these, you'll recognize the fact that when we say maintain a professional image, we don't always mean your photo or your logo or anything like that. It's the total image that you present when people think of your business. And value is not equivalent to price. Value is what the family sees in your business and how they value that. So Mike's going to cover. Oh, sorry. I'll start here. We'll get on over to Mike. He's not ready yet. When you know your target market, it comes down to knowing what they want, being where they're searching and knowing where they're searching, and what they expect to find when they actually find you and go on to there. This is not necessarily what they expect in your business, but what they expect when they find you online or in a bulletin or anywhere along where you might be advertising. All you, Mike, take it away.
All right. So like DJ said, first tip is knowing your target market. You do need to know what your customers want, where they're searching, how they're going to find you, what they expect. You don't need to have the crazy amount of data that Google and Apple has in their customers. Most importantly, if they can't find your business when searching, then it doesn't matter how good your service is because they're just not going to know about it. So what do businesses or what do families actually want? They want to be able to quickly and easily find a business that cares. They want to be able to find a business that they can trust with their family. The first part of that is the quick and easy part. It's important to make things as easy as possible for the family to find you and in turn make a decision. So first things first, when I'm searching, I want to know that you're the right type of business. If I'm looking for a daycare, I want to know if you're a center, if you're in-home. If I'm looking for a cleaning company, I want to know if you're residential or commercial, if you specialize in, say, carpets or general house cleaning. And I know it kind of sounds obvious, but when I'm searching, especially on a mobile device, I expect immediate information, and that is where the trend is going. Everyone is searching on a mobile device. So once I know that you're the right type of business, then I can focus on whether you're actually the right business for me. So I'm going to give you an example of the last two major decisions that I had to make with my wife, and they were to find a contractor to finish our basement and a vacation. For both of them, the process was pretty much the same. Sitting on the couch watching the Red Sox game, pull out my phone. I'm an Android user, not an iPhone user, so I start searching on Google. Then I look at a couple of different sites, find a couple options that look like they could be a fit, and then I send them to my wife to dive deeper into. She likes to weigh the pros and cons, and then we narrow it down to a few choices. So yes, we did need to take more time than just a quick Google search, but in both cases, companies that show up at the top results had a much better chance of gaining our business. So even for more important decisions than where do you want to go for dinner tonight, making sure you're showing up high in those search results is super important. Basically, the vacation came down to planning it ourselves versus going through a travel agent. I actually ended up choosing a travel agent that I found while sitting on my couch on my phone watching the Red Sox game. So yes, it can be that important.
What's the best way to show up these people's searches?
It's a great question. Funny you should ask. I actually have a slide about that.
Oh, interesting.
How convenient. So the easy answer is just be where your customers are searching. 85% of consumers have searched for a local business online within the past year, and that is even true for businesses where everything else is done offline. They have to start somewhere. So what does this all mean? It means that it's becoming more and more important to build an online presence. You do have to be a little bit tech savvy. I'm not saying you have to be a web producer or anything like that or designer, but you do need to be let your customers find you, and they are becoming more and more tech savvy, so you're going to have to evolve with them. You have to show up in online searches. If your business only has a website, it's just not going to be found, unfortunately. You need to have more than that. So you have to utilize social sites like Facebook and Google+, Twitter, LinkedIn, even make a YouTube video. Having businesses on sites like Yelp and Care.com, having a profile on there, or any specific to your region or your industry. You can join industry-specific associations, and you can really piggyback on the marketing dollars that these companies and organizations are spending. And you have to remember, not everyone searches the same way. And even if they are searching the same way, say everyone was searching using Google, the results aren't going to be the same. Google actually personalizes your results now based on your previous search history. So me and DJ could right now search for the same exact thing on our phones, and we would have completely different results. So you think about that, and then you start thinking about all of the other ways that people can search, all the other ways that they can find businesses. They don't have to go to a typical search engine. They can go straight to sites like Yelp or Care.com. They can ask Siri on their iPhones, what's the highest rated cleaning company near me? They can look on Facebook and see who their friends with kids are following. They can go straight to Google Maps and search for child care centers that are near me, and everyone who has a profile on Google Plus is going to be showing up near them. So let's talk a little bit about what they expect when they are searching.
Before we hop there, I just want to point out something. With these page examples that we have, as Mike mentioned in the previous slide of what they want, and he mentioned the importance of just finding location, and he's going to cover that, finding information relevant to that search. He's going to cover that a little bit more deeply in this next slide. But if you take a look at these screenshots we've taken from Yelp, Care.com, and Facebook, if you have a magnifying glass to see them, but basically when you look at them, you see their location and any relevant information such as contact information, address, phone number is right in front of you. So Mike's going to talk about that a little bit more deeply, but I just wanted to get you to see the visual while we had it.
So the examples that I gave of the contractor and the vacation, I gave those because those were big purchases, and I don't have kids at the moment, and my cat is usually fine on his own. So I say that because you guys are in the care industry, so you're either caring for their family, their home, their pets, whatever it may be. And because of that, those decisions are important, and families aren't going to just go with the first business that they see in search results. So their experience is going to be pretty similar to mine. They're going to search, they're going to find a few options, they're going to look at a couple of them more closely. You want to make sure you have enough information immediately available so that they say, yes, I do want to look into this business more closely, rather than just moving on in the search results. Once they decide to look more into your business, they do expect to have a couple things readily available, everything that they need to know. And I mean everything that they need to know. So in creating profiles, you want to utilize what the site gives you. A lot of sites actually have something similar to like a profile strength meter, something along those lines. It lets you know how robust your profile is, or if there are any features that you're not utilizing that you maybe didn't realize. So if they allow you to put a logo in there, put your logo in there. If they allow you to have photos, put your photos in there. Use the space that they give you for the description, your services, and your service area, and things like that. So I can give you a couple tips right now to help you stand out a little bit and hopefully be remembered. So first and foremost, have a clear and concise business description. Typically, the first sentence of the description is going to show up in search results. So you want to make sure that's a grabbing one, because if people are only going to see the first line there, you want to make sure that line is making them want to click on that. Second, have your contact information easily accessible. And I'm going to tell you something that absolutely drives me bananas. If I'm looking at a company's website or profile on my phone, and the phone number is an actual text, I can't just click it to dial. Phones are smart enough to recognize that a phone number is a phone number, but only if it's text. If it's in a photo, if it's a photo of the outside of your building and a phone number, I can't just click that and dial it. And remember when I said that customers want things to be as easy as possible? That doesn't make it as easy as possible. Anyways, moving on. If you're the type of business that sends your employees out to homes, like a cleaning company or a home care agency or in-home tutoring, you have to make sure that you have the areas that you service easy to find. It's one of those things where we want to make sure that you're the right type of business before I can make sure you're a business for me. I need to make sure you service where I am. Second, and lastly, you want to have brand consistency across all these sites. If you guys update your logo, make sure you update it on every profile that you have. If you have stock photos or professional photos that you're using, use the same photos. People do start to recognize and remember them, and the more they see them, the more they're going to want to look into your business if they haven't already. So speaking of professional photos, there's a big difference between a nice photo of your staff in uniform and a grainy cell phone picture. You don't need to hire a professional photographer. Just make sure the photos you're using in these profiles or on your website do represent your business the way that you want it to be represented. So speaking of professional images, DJ's going to actually talk to you now about tip number 2, the other type of professional image, your perceived image. So you take it away, DJ.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Cool. So as Mike mentioned, we're going to talk about the importance of creating a professional image. Now, when it comes to building an online profile, it's important to keep it short, but do enough to make yourself stand out, because as you're well aware, and you've done many searches, there are a lot of options out there. So it's important to differentiate yourself and make yourself stand out. And I can't stress this last point enough of use spell check. So often that people will send a message either professionally to us, or I'll see them in people's profiles, or when I was working with small businesses, they would ask, oh, why is no one responding to me? And then I take a look at some of their messages, and there's a lot of words misspelled, or the wrong tense was used. And I recognize that in some instances that English could be a second language in the industry. And while that can be a very difficult task to master, it's important that the fact that you have either someone help you, or just take the extra time to make sure that your messages are accurate and as clear as possible, because you may have the greatest service in the world, but unless you get people to respond to you and trust you to give you that chance to show your services, it's going to be very difficult to make them realize your value.
Just going to jump in real quick and add something to that. Don't just rely on spell checks, because there are a lot of words like where and we're and your that spell check won't pick up on, and we see that all the time with businesses that are sending messages to families. And even though it seems like a little thing, what it shows to families that are considering you is attention to detail. So just make sure you're giving a quick look over before you send.
Yeah, especially important in the care industry. If they're going to trust you with their loved one, they want to know that you do pay attention to little details, and if you're watching their son, you're going to recognize differences in his behavior, being able to relay what he did during the day or anything along those lines. So building from there, when you create your online profile, as Mike mentioned I think previously, you want to create a unique business description. take your time to write this. This is very important. This is who you are as a business. You want to really stress why you got in the business, how committed you are to your customers. You don't start a care business, pet care, senior care, child care, to get rich and retire at 40. You do it because you either love taking care of kids or the elderly, or you love animals. So it's important to recognize, to show the family that you are more than a business who wants them as a client, but you do it because you love their family member and you want to do the best job possible. Another part of image is the very literal sense of image, where you use professional photos. At Care.com, at least, we see a lot of people taking selfies in a Grateful Dead T-shirt, or have pictures of them with their family, or at a picnic, and we really try to not use these because it doesn't really necessarily present the most professional image. The care industry is more informal than most business industries, but we're trying to kind of professionalize that industry and make it more of a business setting. As I mentioned previously, personalizing the conversation. We're going to show you some examples of a great job personalizing the conversation, but when you send a message to a family talking about their loved one and wanting to take care of them, people can recognize when they're getting a cookie-cutter email saying, I'm John, I've been in the care industry for 25 years, love to take care of your loved one, call me. Well, that's very bare bones, but you'll be surprised at how many messages we see that are along those same lines, and then people will ask, once again, how come people aren't responding to me? And it's because they can tell that they're receiving a cookie-cutter email and they're not unique. Especially true for the care industry. They want a caregiver who's going to treat their loved one like family. And people who send cookie-cutter emails and messages without messaging personal information about that family, or the fact that they even read their profile or what the family was looking for, doesn't necessarily give off that vibe that they care about that person as an individual. They're more or less just like they want the next dollar. And like I mentioned, you guys aren't in it just for the money. You do it because you love it. You do it because you love taking care of people. So personalizing the conversation shows that commitment and dedication to the family. Posting positive reviews. It's important. People generally don't trust people, and that's why people will instantly say no when someone tries to sell you something. But reading positive reviews and getting a recommendation from people and hearing positive word of mouth makes people trust you. The best way to do that is posting those positive reviews. If I've never heard of your business and I'm coming to your site and I see that no one's reviewed you, I'm a little wary of you. But if I see 10 great recommendations, even simple as 5-star rating from some people, you automatically gain a little bit more of my trust that way. Think about when you purchase a product on Amazon. The first thing you do is look at the reviews and the stars, and you're going to treat a 5-star product much more differently than a 3-star. And that's not much different for the care business. It's actually probably even more important for the care business because you're not a product, you're a family member. And then something to touch back upon is linking to social media accounts. One web page is not enough nowadays. Same with one social media account. If you have a LinkedIn, you should have a Twitter, you should have a Facebook. I know a question rolled in earlier of what what sites people should join for web presence and what social media accounts they should join. Do your best to look up for industry-specific ones, but there's definitely obviously, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and just whatever you're doing across these social media platforms, make sure you stay consistent. If you talk about something on Facebook, make sure you continue to talk about that on LinkedIn and create a more consistent professional brand. Something I just want to draw attention to here is, I think I mentioned it already, but in the bottom right, you'll see don't forget why you got into the care business in the first place. A lot of times when you're stressing about money or finding clients or finding caregivers, your passion can kind of wane. But always remind yourself that you got into this business because you love it. And make sure that you're reflecting that as of course you go. That is what differentiates you from other companies, your dedication to that family. So as we mentioned on the beginning of that slide was the importance of communicating professionally. This goes beyond spell check, although I can't say it enough to spell check your grammar, read it, make sure it's clear. Little things like if you're writing a letter to John, call him John and not Jim or Bob. I've admittedly done this in the past, and it really hurts your credibility. So just make sure before you hit send, make sure you've read it 2 or 3 times to make sure that you've really hit everything you want to say. you've said it professionally, and you've said it accurately. Once you hit send, it's really hard to take back. So your image goes beyond a logo. You may have the most beautiful logo in the world, but if you're communicating informally and unprofessionally, it doesn't matter. An image is only what people perceive you as. So you, like I said, you could be the greatest caregiver in the world, but if your image doesn't reflect that, you're not going to get the chance to show your skills. So here's some tips on how to communicate professionally. One is be prompt. So when someone either comes through on a site or calls your cell phone and leaves you a voicemail, it's important that you try to answer those requests and questions within 24 business hours. I say business hours because I don't think anyone truly expects you to be on call all hours of the night. But what being prompt shows is that shows that you are dependable and accountable, especially because you're taking care of someone's loved one. They want to know that they can count on you to A, show up, and B, be responsive to their needs and their wants. The best way to show that, and the best way to actually blow that, would be to not respond to their original inquiry. I've had that happen on both sides. When I was on the phone with small businesses, I may have let a couple get away because they didn't respond quickly enough, and I lost their trust. And I know when I've looked for contractors or I've used Care.com to find dog walkers, and people who don't respond to me, I automatically kind of lose their trust a little bit. Being professional, it means avoiding slang and making sure you spell check. And as you can see, that's going to be a common theme over the course of this presentation. But avoiding slang until you get to know someone, such as saying like LOL or shaking my head or anything along those lines, like those famous, like those infamous text acronyms. Until you have build a rapport and you have a nice one-on-one relationship with your potential client or family, it's important to keep that professional image. Something that I've seen a lot that people go wrong is answering their phones and emails too impersonal. I know when I was calling some care businesses, I would call their phone, which they presumably use for their business, and answer, "Hey, who's this?" That, in my case, because I'm just a vendor, they don't necessarily care. But who knows? I could be someone who wants to enlist their business, and in that case, if I'm looking for them to take care of my family member, that is not who I want to deal with. I want to deal with someone who answers their phone. Even the simple hello is fine, or hello, this is David from Care.com. Let me know who I'm speaking with, that they're professional and that they take this role seriously. If that involves maybe getting separate email addresses where you have one Gmail account for personal use, or you have one at your business name account for your professional use, that way you can keep it differentiated. I know it could be costly, but you may be having two separate cell phones just to keep you going. But it's important that if you do use your personal cell phone for business, you treat every new call like it's a business call.
Just to chime in there are some ways around having to pay for another line too. You can get a free Google Voice number that you can use on your cell phone, and it will tell you if someone is calling that Google Voice number or if they're calling your personal cell phone. So you can shut off business calls in the middle of the night when you're trying to sleep and only receive personal calls. But you'll also be able to know how to answer the phone just with a hello or hi, this is Mike with Care.com. So things like that. I have to assume there are other ones too, but I know Google Voice is one that we see a lot of businesses using. So it's a good way to have one cell phone, keep it in your pocket at all times, but still be able to separate personal from business.
We just got a great question that came in of how do you respond to a family member when they said they reviewed your application but decided to pursue another candidate. This is when your professionalism can show even more. You say, I respect your decision. You ask them if there's anything that you can do to win their business again. But if they've decided to pass you over, you say, best of luck to you. I hope everything works out the best, but if something doesn't work out one way or another, feel free to call me back. We're always welcoming as a business. Just keep those channels of communication open. You can still contact them and ask them, how is it going, and you let them bounce resource off you. I know a lot of times not every small business is the same, so that family member might not necessarily they might have a question about what kind of service they're getting from that SMB or small business. Feel free to let them bounce ideas off of you. To let them know that this is industry standard. No, this is weird. So it's very important to keep those lines of communication open and remain professional at all times, especially when you receive a rejection.
Every time you communicate with the family, it's an opportunity, whether they buy from you or not. So if a family is reviewing applications, if they decide to go with someone else, we see it happen all the time. If something happens, say that caregiver they go with misses their appointment or they're sick or they need to go on vacation or something, they go back through their applications And businesses that were professional are going to get a second chance, and ones that kind of just blow them off are probably not. So they may only need, say, transportation one time for their father, so they say, no thanks, I reviewed your application, but I'm going with someone else. But if you're professional with them, they may have a friend or family member that actually needs more in-depth care, and they're going to remember you because of that professionalism. So treat every communication as an opportunity, whether it's for now or the future.
Yep, I know there's countless amount of times where I've been in sales I used to be in sales for a long time before I switched to marketing. And, I heard no almost every day. And there's amazing times where if I handled it with class and professionalism and respected their decision, that 3, 4 months down the road, they remembered that. They called me back, and I had another chance to win their business. So that's very, very important to keep that open. Along those same lines, if someone does choose to go with a different route, don't badmouth your competition. That's very unprofessional. Instead of highlighting things that they might not do as well as you, talk about how well you do them instead. So the last point on communicating professionally would be the importance of being authentic. This traces back to that question of reminding yourself why you got in this care business in the first place. You obviously care about taking care of families. Always let that show. Be yourself. Don't always get too salesy. We've all dealt with the perfume woman at the mall or the used car salesman who just doesn't feel like they're being themselves. They feel like they're being a caricature trying to sell you something. In the care industry, all the family wants to find is someone reliable, dependable, trustworthy, who will love their family member like it's their own family. And you can't do that without being authentic. So you do this by customizing your replies and not being cookie cutter, and just talking about your relevant work experience and letting your own skill set sell yourself. If you talk to people like they're people instead of clients, you'd be amazed at how far that will get you. Come on, there we go. So here's some examples of some messages that we found. I'm not going to sit here and read them to you, but I'll call out some things that each individual does well. So on the top one, where it says, "Dear Dave, I saw your posting. I thought you might want to know my experience." He did a great job of referencing his past experience and letting his expertise speak for him, and then pointing out his reviews to let the family start to trust him and see if they'd be a good fit. Sandy does a good job of talking, referencing specifically. Sorry, not Sandy, but the letter to Sandy does a great job specifically referencing what that family is looking for. So the family must have posted a job talking about twins or having 4-year-olds, in which case Sandy, the writer specifically mentions that to Sandy that she has experience doing this and calls out that she actually read her profile. And then down below, he talks about taking care of big dogs. You don't necessarily have to love big dogs more than little dogs, but at least by personalizing the response to talk to a family that is posting a job about having a big dog, it's important to customize that to make it more relevant. Something I wish that each of these messages did was add some kind of call to action at the bottom instead of putting the onus on the family. So for instance, in the middle one, where it says, "Please check out my profile, and if you want to chat further, please message me." What works out way better is you say, "Please check out my profile, and if you think it would be a good fit, I'd love to give you a call. Are you free tomorrow at 1 or Tuesday at 3? And what this does is that this doesn't put the pressure on the family anymore, and now lets the family just say yes. And then in which case the action is on you, the business, not the family. So the less action you can make the family take, and the more action you take on your own, that'll go a long way in getting more responses and therefore getting more business.
People are just more likely to respond to a question too. It's just the psychology because they feel like they have the answers too.
People feel guilty. At the same time when you talk to a family and say, "Oh, am I catching you at a good time? Or am I catching you at a bad time?" People don't like to lie. So if you say they're catching them at a bad time and they don't, and they feel bad saying yes, whereas if you say you're catching me at a good time, they can say, "Oh, no, it's never a good time." Little things like that. So I would definitely recommend ending your messages with some kind of question. So the last tip is the importance of communicating your value. And people see value really in 3 different ways, and especially in the care business. They can see your value in your price. If you're the lowest priced caregiver, then that might be a value to some people. Others might see value in your service. So maybe you're not the lowest priced in your competition, but you offer a differentiator in service, or you have great knowledge. You've been in business for 25, 30 years, so you have a great knowledge of the care industry and how to care for their loved one. It's important to recognize in which sphere you're competing in. So if your specialization is you have dedicated customer service and you will do anything for your family, then you are competing on service. So your value will lie in your ability to differentiate yourself on great customer service. Same goes for knowledge and price. And then on the other hand, when you're talking to a family, it's important to recognize what they value. If they're just dead set on getting the lowest priced caregiver and you're just not that, point them in the direction of someone you know who does have a lower price who you can trust. As Mike, I think, mentioned in one of our offset conversations, is the fact that even if you can't personally help that family, by pointing them in a direction and acting as a professional and serving as a resource, that even though it doesn't necessarily benefit you, will go a long way for the family. You guys care about people, otherwise you wouldn't be in the business. So by pointing family in the right direction when you can't work with them, or recognizing what your sense of value doesn't necessarily match theirs, will go a long way.
Especially dealing with families too, they're making decisions about their own family. If price was their only concern, then every family would eat at McDonald's for every single meal. They're going to make a decision that's best suited for their family. So if you're not the lowest price, stand behind why. They want to make sure they're getting value for the price. So a lot of families are willing to pay more for a better quality service. They just want to make sure you can provide that. So rather than trying to compete down on price, you should build up your value, let them know why you're better, what kind of experience you have, what kind of service you can bring that a cheaper competitor can't. And you'd be surprised how many times families are willing to pay a little bit more, especially for a service that's dealing with their family or their home.
Good tips. Cool. So I know one of the questions I posted to you earlier was always don't forget that why you got in the business in the first place. Another question I want you to constantly ask yourself is, why should the customer choose me? And you should always have a great answer for this. And tracing back to the last slide, it could either be because of your dedicated service, because of your great knowledge, because of your price, or hopefully, ideally, all of the above. But constantly ask yourself that, because that's what you want to relay to the customer and the family. If your dedicated service is why the customers choose you, make sure that's the value add that you're showing the customer or the family. So you always want to add value, whether this is experience, their established expertise, or the fact that you're very, very dependable and accountable. You're different than the rest. What we hear all the time is that businesses have trouble competing with individual caregivers simply because of the price. So the route you have to take there is showing the value that you add by being a business and showing that you're different than the individuals. Truly differentiate yourself based on your service and your expertise. This can be in form of certifications or your dependability, where if you're a child care center or senior care in-home and you're competing against an individual, you want to relay to the family, if that individual gets sick, the onus is now on the family to find some more backup care. But if you're working with an agency, that agency has countless number of caregivers that they can always count on. So you're much more dependable to that family, and they can count on you much more than they can an individual caregiver. And to a lot of families, that is worth the difference in price. That is the added value that you have.
You'd be surprised how many times families don't even think of that question, what happens if my caregiver gets sick?
Yep.
They don't even think of it.
Exactly. And chances are, if you're working with kids, no one's always going to get sick. And the important thing to outline here is you want to use your online profile to demonstrate your value. A lot of times we don't even see is that people, I'll talk to them. I'm like, all right, so what do you specialize in? What kind of value do you add to your family? And they'll tell me all these fantastic answers of why, and I can see why they got in the business. I can see that they should be much more successful, that they really are a great business to work with. They deeply care. And then I read their profile, and it's nowhere to be found. So what I would like you to do as an exercise would be to ask yourself, why should this customer choose me? Write it down, answer it, all the things you do to add value and differentiate yourself from the competition, and make sure you put that in your profile and relay that to your customers so they know how awesome you are just as much as you do. So that's a wrap up. Mike's just going to recap the things we talked about, and then we'll get to some questions. We've seen that we have a bunch rolling in, so As I mentioned, if we don't get to them, we'll reach out to you separately.
So just quick recap first, know your target market. You want to consider their needs, be where they are searching, make sure they can find you, and deliver on their expectations. You want to have a professional image, communicate appropriately and professionally, use professional photos. If they're not professional photos, make sure they're professional looking. As great as cell phones are today, a digital camera still has a better looking photo. But if you're just going to use your phone, just make sure that they're not blurry, they're clean. You guys have your uniforms on, your staff has uniforms on. Share customer reviews. If you have a good relationship with a customer, a lot of times it's as simple as just asking. And if they don't know how to leave a review for them, make it as easy as possible. Send them a link that goes directly to the review section of your online profiles. And make sure that you're getting the customers that you have the best relationship with to give an honest review. People can smell a fake one a mile away. We've all seen a restaurant review on Yelp where you just know it came from the owner. So make sure that they're giving an honest review. And communicate your value. You want to differentiate yourself. There's price, there's service, there's knowledge. You don't have to be the cheapest one, but you have to make sure people know where the value is and what type of service you can provide. And make sure you know what the family values so that you can demonstrate to them how you can provide value and how your service is the right one for them. And finally, I would say the most important thing is invest your time in some research. There's a ton of information out there. It's constantly changing. So read some articles on marketing small businesses online. Attend more webinars like this. There are a ton of free ones. Look at what your direct competitors are doing, whether they're in your market or even some people who are in the same industry but outside your market. See what they're doing. See what works. You could subscribe to some blogs. You could follow industry leaders on Twitter and Facebook. You can share success stories with other businesses, and you would be surprised how willing your peers are to help. Care.com does it all the time. So you could take a look at some of these sites and find businesses that are in your industry that you don't compete with. Maybe they're in a different market. Find one that has a great looking profile or they have a ton of reviews, and just ask them, how did you get so many reviews on your profile? You will be amazed how willing people are to share. And I'm sure there's something that you're doing that will help them too. So get that type of relationship going with some other businesses that are in your industry. And we do have a couple questions that have been rolling in. I can answer a couple now. Some are just elaborating a little bit more on subjects that we talked on. One of them that I saw was, what if I don't have time to create all of these profiles? And one thing I would say is it's extremely important to get yourself out there. The way that trends are going, people are searching in so many different places. You have to have that online presence. So if you can't do it, maybe you can help someone in your office do it by compiling some things, logos, photos, give that to them so that they can, take the time and, take a description that you give them and put them on the site. DJ, have anything to add there?
I'd say if you don't have someone you can trust and you truly don't have the time, it's important to, like Mike said, find the time. But if not, at least get on some. One is better than none.
Yeah, prioritize
one.
Prioritize
if you can't get them all, prioritize the most important ones to your business.
You don't need to do them in one sitting.
Yeah, or your locality. You got to start somewhere. Small bites, I guess.
Yeah. Another question we saw was, how do I know which ones to pay for? Some sites are completely free, like Yelp and Facebook. Other sites have a basic free option and a premium option. So I would say there's no reason not to be on all of the free ones. And then once you're there, you can start to look at the differences between what you get for free and what you get when you pay. And the ones, if you are, say, speaking with other businesses that are not in direct competition with you, you can ask them what's working for them. But most important is just testing and iterating. Every business has to spend something to market. So you want to make sure that you're tracking your marketing spend. If you're going to pay for something, make sure you know exactly how well it did. So if you are on 4 or 5 different sites and maybe they all allow you to offer a special offer or some sort of coupon, have something that says, mention Care to receive X% off. That way every time someone mentions that, they found you on Care.com. Or mention this ad on Yelp to receive blah, blah, blah. Whatever it ends up being, do something that you can track that so that you know exactly how much you're getting. And know that there is, not every person is going to go to your website or call you up and purchase, but there's value in that. You never know if they're going to come back down the road or if they're going to, tell a friend or a family member. So like we said before, treat every communication as an opportunity and be professional with them. We've seen a lot of questions coming in about getting clients to write reviews. I know it's never easy to ask people to take time out of their day to go to a site and review you. First, don't be afraid to ask, and it is difficult to get people to take that time, but first, don't be afraid to ask. You can make it as easy as possible for them by sending them a link directly to the review section of your profile. So what I would do is log out of everything and then find your profile and go to the review section, and whatever the URL is on the top of your browser, just copy that and paste it into an email. You can make it look a little bit nicer by highlighting that URL, right-clicking and changing the text so it says review whatever business here, so that they know exactly where that link is going to go, and they just click it, it goes right there. A lot of sites they may have to have an account. Some sites they don't. It's good for you to know that before you send it to them, just so they're prepared. If you say, you just have to create a quick account, it takes 2 seconds. They are more willing to do that than if they're surprised and they go to the site and they have to create an account. So just kind of setting that expectation. And remove any unnecessary steps. You can even offer some sort of incentive, like a random drawing for people who leave a review.
Yep.
Be careful not to be buying reviews, though, because people can smell that a mile away, too.
Yeah. One question we had that was pretty good is, when starting your web presence online through social media site, should we focus on one area? And they use examples such as safety in the home or healthy lifestyle. I would say yes and no at the same time. It's good. You want to go. It all goes back to that question of what do you do that makes your family want to choose you. So you want to start with what sets you apart. If you think that it's the fact that you offer great safety in the home, then yes, you should go that way. But only really you can answer the question of what makes your business special and how you differentiate yourself, and that's where I would start when it comes to building your presence. Find out what you do best, find out what you specialize in, and then really make that your focal point.
Seeing a good question on how to generate more word of mouth, which is the kind of golden ticket to success, is creating that. It's never easy, and even though it's kind of perceived to be free, word of mouth is not free. It takes time, it takes effort. One thing I would say is offer incentives to people to refer their friends. Kind of the same way you get your 11th coffee free or something like that too. The more people refer their friends, the more of a discount they get. Getting reviews helps a lot. Getting people to write reviews will attract more business, so it's sort of in a way word of mouth. And most importantly too is social media. It may not be enough to just have the profile on Facebook. You have to actually, take your time and dive in there and, share, like retweet some articles, share some people's posts that are relevant to your industry, share some, personal experiences, like photos, actually interact with it. Don't just have it on there sitting there.
Something I really want to stress is the fact that any marketing endeavor requires patience. Don't necessarily think you're going to get immediate results. So whatever you try, let it sit for a little while, gauge the results, and if you don't think it's working, but then you make a change. But if you don't rush it, always be patient, always be measuring, and always be testing. That's the big thing, is just having patience. Oftentimes we receive phone calls from businesses wondering why they hadn't received any clients yet. And then I would go back and look to see when their profile, and it was a week ago. Nothing in marketing really happens overnight. It takes a lot of time. That's I think a big thing that gets understated.
Yeah.
The amount of patience it takes to rely on this stuff.
And getting on multiple sites and keeping up with some of the newer ones that are coming out is important too. It's kind of the difference between fishing with a spear or casting a wide net. You want to make sure you're covering your bases. And every now and again, you may want to just kind of do a quick search and see if there are new options out there. Kind of surprisingly, I didn't realize how big Pinterest was, but
yeah.
Every business on Pinterest, something that I don't really go on, but my wife is on all day long,
yep.
And we found a ton of businesses on there that I didn't know existed, and I had no idea that Pinterest was that big, so I'm sure there are some of you out there that don't realize that businesses are on there.
Another thing we can add, too, is the importance of keeping up with your competition and seeing what they're doing. If you think your competitors have a great idea, borrow it and improve on it. One of the biggest examples that I've always seen on someone who does that is Apple. Apple didn't invent the laptop. They didn't invent the MP3 player. They took what other people had, they put their own twist on it, and they perfected it. So you can do the same thing in your industry. If you think that someone has a great promotional plan, take those ideas, use them, borrow them. No one has a monopoly on good ideas. It's important to keep your ear to the ground and stay on top of industry trends and what your competition is doing.
It's a good point. Literally nothing that came out with the latest iPhone hasn't been on Android phones for years. Apple's just doing it better.
Yeah, take what your competition does and do it better. Really good question that came in is what happens when your market isn't tech savvy and how do you capture that audience? I think that goes all the way back to just being where your audience is. Or are? I don't know. If your audience is not online, then be where they are. If you think that you have a huge target market in your church bulletin, or you have success hanging signs on telephone poles and cold calling people, do that. You know your market. You know where your target market is. I think the important thing is the fact that you do recognize that. So be where they are, be where you think they're going, and just stay in front of them.
And even if, say, you don't have a tech-savvy audience, if you put up a profile and over a couple months 100 people see it, online that's not a very big number, but say you put up a flyer somewhere and 100 people see it, that's pretty good exposure. If it's free and it doesn't take time, you still might as well do it, but like you said, if they're not tech-savvy, you do have to be where they are searching. But again, if it's free, you might as well. It's just part of knowing who your audience is and knowing how they're finding businesses.
We're going to take one last question and we'll wrap it up. Someone asked if I have no experience in the child care field, how do I provide customer reviews or client ratings of your business? My answer is you just got to start somewhere. You start gaining that experience, letting your solid work build that client trust. In that case, if they're just getting in the door, you rely on your customers to be your first marketers and have them tell their friends what the great experience they've had. Direct them to your online profile. You got to start from zero somewhere. The important thing is just start. That's all you got to do. Just start. Trust your skill set and trust that your customers and your families will be happy, and they'll want to tell people about the experience they had with you.
Let that passion come through.
Yep.
Because if you're new in the industry, then you're just getting into it like we were talking about before because you have that passion. Make sure they see that, and they will if you're deciding to get into that industry.
Yep. All right. Definitely thank you. We had a ton of great questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to them right now. As I mentioned at the beginning, if we see that we didn't answer your question, we'll definitely reach out to you one way or the other. We will be sending you a copy of this presentation, ideally tomorrow, and as long as technology cooperates, you'll also receive a recording. Just a gentle reminder, please take the survey at the end. It'll be both emailed to you, and when you close this webinar, you'll have the option. So please take that, and once again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.